Welcome back, everybody, to the newest episode of the Get Real podcast, formerly known as the New York Only podcast. I'm your host, Matt Harms, broker owner of the Time Away Realty Group. And I have the pleasure of being joined today by a local real estate investor, Tyler Hart. How are you today, Tyler?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Matt. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate you taking the time out of a flip project to be on the show.
Yes, flip project and also doing some water remediation on a house that's built on a hill. So,
Interesting. We're going to come back to that. If you'd be so kind first, tell everyone a little bit about yourself. Like, how long have you been a real estate investor?
so I'm only 25, believe it or not. I've only been doing it for 4 years, but it sort of crosses over because I'm a power plant engineer or an operating engineer. In Canada, it's known as a stationary engineer. So working on boilers, working on different things along those lines. But it's going well. Sorry, I'm just gonna put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Like here I'm wearing the one Vanderbilt hat. Um, I haven't worked there, but I've worked previously at like the Tiffany's build out on near Grand Central, or not Grand Central, near Central Park. I've worked at 550 Madison on the build out there. That's a Sony building. I work at a power plant now in Manhattan, which is really cool. High pressure steam. We've got boilers, chillers, um, heat exchangers. We've got waste heat boilers. We've got a cogen plant. Um, all your basic things. Like we actually have generators there too. We're off of Con Ed, which is pretty cool. So we create our own electricity. So it sort of intersects with what I'm doing with houses. Houses are just much smaller than buildings or complexes that are 20 something stories, over 1 million square feet. you know Having a central plant's a little bit different. It's sort of like having your mechanics in the basement, your city water feed or your well feed. Then you have your waste lines that connect to the sewer or your septic. You got your boiler, your heat pump, HVAC systems. So it's same thing, just slightly different, just larger. But it's cool. It's been a fun ride, and I really enjoy what I do, and I can see myself sort of going in the direction you are, having more units under one roof. Right now I started off with little single family houses, the little cutesy houses. But they cost money and it's expensive, so you have to buy right, as you always say, buy first, or when you buy, you make all your money, which is 100% correct. And then along the way, you hit bumps because you're trying to find good contractors, trying to find guys you can trust on. My saying is you do it once, you do it right. I tell all of my contractors who come in, I was like, if you have to come back, and if you're using the wrong tools and stuff, don't even show up to the job site. I always ask them what tools they use, especially plumbers. I'm like, we're not running PEX, we're running, the Viega Pro Press fitting stuff. Like if we're gonna redo any septic and stuff, we're gonna do it right. No Orangeburg, cut out the old Orangeburg cast iron, poo poo, and put in the right stuff. Make sure you have your main clean out on your waistline to your septic if you need to blow out the lines, etc. Or snake it.
So your operating engineer background, I mean, it sounds like it's really given you a big leg up on a lot of new investors because mechanical systems tend to be the most complex part of a house. Obviously, and as you said, just on a smaller scale than a building, but at such a young age to have such a line in the sand with your contractors on what's acceptable and what's not. I mean, too many investors will just accept whatever a contractor tells them because they like them. It's their sister's cousin's boyfriend, and they'll give them 2 and 3 chances, which all wind up costing time. And we all know time is money.
Correct. Yeah, that's something that I learned is sometimes if I pay a little bit more but get the job done faster, I have holding costs anyway. Say it takes me an extra month, but I go cheaper. Say, my hard money loan or my carrying interest on the project's an extra 1,300. If I just paid that 1,300 up front, would have been done by now and I got the tenants in, or would have been sold on the market, you know?
That is something I speak about at length in my new book, Get Real, because too many people in every business, but especially in the real estate business, are penny wise and pound foolish. They'll look at a price up front and not take it in context of the overall project. right? So you could look at this in terms of the type of finishes you're using, and well, why am I going to use that one for X dollars per square foot when I can use this one? Not looking at the long term. Well, what's the resale value going to be for product A versus product B? What are my taxes and my other holding costs, as you just mentioned? If I can pay this guy $2,000 more than I want to, but come in 2 months ahead of schedule, what's that doing? Because also the market can turn in that 2 months you're sitting on your property.
Yeah, summer versus winter time, like sale prices, there's that small little dip. Like it typically trends upward. If we hit a recession, it may pull back. We hit something crazy like 2008, it pulls back. Um, but it's overall you have your expected time frames from winter is a little bit down. Usually summer you can get a little bit more, especially if you're selling single families. Because it's families moving in with kids most of the time.
Yeah,
That's your
what I've actually seen along the seasonality is a lot of realtors will tell you spring, like March, April, May, that's when your peak market is. And I'm not going to disagree, but I also think it runs a lot longer than that because, as you just mentioned, families with kids in the single family market, especially, school starts in the Northeast in September. So people are still looking to make that move, or will be very serious about making that move up until August, September-ish, to get their children into the school districts they want them to be in. Otherwise, once that window has passed and it starts getting cold and there's snow on the ground and they're charging the holding costs for the owner of the property between maintenance and snow removal and making sure it's safe for buyers to visit, that's where I think that window starts to close until you start to get into the next spring, where now people are like, all right, I'm going to give this another shot.
Yeah, and good luck doing site work too, or any exterior work during, like winter months in New England. Not happening.
Even interior work. I mean, there's certain, depending what paints you're using or primers and things inside. I mean, they don't adhere well in sub-zero temperatures. You now need the added cost of heating the place to a level you normally would not heat a vacant home.
Yeah, the space heaters for a sheetrock job I did. That's hilarious. The guys were like, "Oh, do you have heat in the house?" It's like we're doing something with the electrical, so we turned it off, and I was like, "No, we're not going to have it. You got propane or some sort of generator or something that you can run, or." And they were like, "Oh, well, blah blah blah," and that's when I learned. I was like, "These guys are useless." You have a sheetrock job. I told you there's not going to be any power, and they're like, "Well, it's not going to stick properly." The spackle. I was like, "Bro, you knew there was no heat. Like, just to rent space heaters, or just if you're a sheetrock company, you don't have space heaters. You know?"
Right. Your job is not to tell me it's not going to work. Your job is to tell me how you're going to make it work.
Yeah, I ended up just buying the space heaters, and I was like, "These guys are freaking dumb as a rock."
You can
But
go to any local tool rental spot and buy one of those propane fired turbines for like $12 a day.
yeah, yep, there you go. So I know I was just like, these guys, they're making me do more work, and it's like I'm paying them a good amount, fair number, you know, and it's like I don't have time for this. Like I've got tenants, I've got a life, I've got, four other trades on the job site. Like I don't need. Why are you playing games?
You just hit on something that I think is really important for people. And again, I cover this. I'm going to keep plugging my book that's coming out in October. But a lot of people think, oh, you're in real estate, must be nice, right? Oh, you've got such an easy job. You just make money. And no one quite realizes, even in a flip, if you're not doing any of the physical work yourself, just how much you're dealing with.
Yeah, you could easily spend $100,000 on a house that's at least 1,500 square feet, like just in renovation expenses, depending on the framing. If the framing's really screwed up, that's a big nut. Doors, flooring, paint, sheetrock. If your roof is jacked, you're gonna need a new roof. They're not cheap. If you have water remediation problems, you're gonna have to remediate those. You know, so.
And someone's got to put in the time to locate these contractors, negotiate the price, discuss the scope of work, keep them on task, inspect, And that's all before the other things that you're doing as an investor and a property owner, right? People don't know, you got to pay your taxes, you've got to pay the utility bills. It's not just the, hey, I bought a house and now I'm going to make $50,000. No, I mean, sometimes if you do the math on how many hours you put into a flip deal versus your profit, people would be surprised that it's not quite, well, when you buy right, it is. But with all the unexpected things, and I want to jump into a project I know you're working on now, that can really mitigate a lot of your profit when something unforeseen pops up, if you just expect the world to be all sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah, absolutely. For me too, I've realized that carrying a lot of debt too on properties, debt to equity, as you probably know. Um, I'm getting to the point where I'm like, why own so many properties with 30, 40% equity? Why not just freaking move stuff around so then I own them free and clear? I know the tax on a tax basis, you're like, oh, what? But there's always things you want to change up, because you want to do new siding or the roof is coming up. If you got that cash flow coming in, you can write that off anyway, you know? And it's like, I'm going to start a family soon. I'm going to get married. I'm looking to minimize my risk and I call it idiot proof. I want to idiot proof all my houses. I want to go in so a knuckle dragging oaf who's drooling out of their mouth, who's coming to the job site, who doesn't know anything about anything, which would never happen. But, you know, has like your supply and your return labeled on your boiler, has the labeling everywhere, main shutoff valves labeled, like be able to look and make sure like your footings are done properly on exterior work, just like the basic things, like make sure you have a dehumidifier in a basement that has a crawl space that's pumped outside underneath the frost line. Just like little things that you would think are like common sense, but common sense is not so common.
No, it's not. And I mean, we already covered your kind of engineering and mechanical background, but I would imagine knowing real estate and construction, there's a ton of components that you just mentioned that you probably didn't know from your existing experience. So, as a new investor, what did you do and how did you go about making sure not to make those expensive mistakes?
You ask other people. Honestly, go find the 3 or 4 best real estate investors in your area or someone who may be a little bit farther away and just literally pick up the phone and call them. Like it's very much so team sport. Everybody loves each other out here who are in real estate. You figure out who are the scumbags. Excuse my French. I don't know if I can say that word on here.
You can say whatever you want.
But the low life scum lord real estate people, and you figure them out pretty quickly. My father raised me right. I do things properly. So when I see people who are doing things, butt backwards, I'm like, and a lot of people get all excited too if they have real estate, because they're really into it. But you very quickly realize who's dynamite, right? Who you want to sort of, if you choose to partner with them, you can grow with people who cut corners and do things that you're just like, is it really worth not spending the extra 5 grand to just fix this, properly and then never have to worry about it?
And to your point of just asking people, like I feel I've seen it in my own businesses. People are afraid to ask. They'd rather just try to do it themselves. They feel, I don't know what the actual roadblock is, but as you said, most people in the real estate investing world, it's not cutthroat. Almost nobody, yeah, we may at one point have interest in the same deal, but for the most part, there's enough market share out there and enough different investing strategies and approaches where we can complement each other far better than we can conflict with each other. And I want to give 3 quick examples. The first, for anyone who doesn't, no one knows, Tyler and I actually met because I have a cover on the back of my Jeep that says, ask me about real estate and my phone number. And I was driving through Manhattan one day and Tyler called me. And
Yes.
we had a great 35-minute conversation. We've stayed in touch ever since. I think that was about 2 years ago.
Yep.
And just yesterday, I was out in Pennsylvania checking on a few of our properties. We scheduled a lunch meeting with a local short-term investor. They have like 150 Airbnb units in the area,
Dang.
and like 20 long-term rentals. They want nothing to do with their long-term. So we wound up collaborating where our short-term business is going to them because we exited the short-term market.
Smart.
We're going to be taking over their long-term business on a property management basis. And then we headed to another building after that lunch meeting to do a clean out, needed to place a dumpster, couldn't figure out where to put it, went to the building behind us, found out who the owner is. Owner's a local real estate investor. And now he's asking for our help in renting his garage after he lets us use it to put our dumpster in it at no cost.
Yeah, it's so cool. Because a lot of times real estate investors try to do everything themselves, which is silly in my opinion. You want to being a leader and being a manager. I'm taking the classes now for BOMI, which is the international. It's essentially like BOMI is for all commercial real estate, right? And you get your SMT, your systems maintenance technician, and then your systems management association thing. I probably said them wrong, but those two get you certified, so then you can start going up and become a chief or an assistant chief or a COO. Maybe not me yet because I'm still too young. I have a lot more to learn and to go first. And some of these commercial real estate companies. So, um, but along the way, you realize it's like, oh, you need to like a true leader knows how to delegate tasks well, and they find the best people for them. And you need to realize sort of like even on the commercial side. Um, I have a friend, I'll call him friend, who's it's actually a family member who is running a very big project in the Bronx, Montefiore Hospital, and
Okay.
he's running into some roadblocks in terms of finding solid HVAC guys, and it's like you need to know your field because in the city you have a lot of the union. So you have local 30, local 94, and a couple other locals that do that work, and they're hiring non-union, and if you hire non-union, sometimes you don't get the, people who've been trained and educated and stuff. So you run into a couple of roadblocks. Sometimes, like I say, it's better to get somebody who's certified, stamped, and knows what they're doing, that can be trusted and relied on, and then that you build that relationship for years. It's not like just one off. Um,
You also hit on a critical skill that I think a lot of people, and it's great you're doing those certifications. I absolutely give you kudos for personal development. But one of the most important things in really any business, but especially real estate where you're flipping or you're delegating and you're looking to scale, is people skills. Some of the most mechanically competent people I know cannot run a real estate investment business because that's all they know. They can't deal with people. They can't deal with delegation. They think they know everything about everything. And that makes it very difficult to succeed because there's no one that knows anything. I don't care if you've been doing this 65 years. There's new advancements in technology coming out every day. You're not always going to know everything. And the best thing to do is ask rather than do it wrong and now wind up either costing yourself time, money, or both.
Correct. Yeah, that's what I notice a lot. Like when I go and walk properties, because I'm walking properties all the time, right? Like you see oil tanks leaking, you see, just like water in basements, you see all these different things. And if you don't have an idea of how to fix them, you just start, you like seize up, your whole body tenses, right? But there's ways to remediate it. I can pick up the phone, I could call my buddy. A lot of times I don't like to work with family or friends. But I do have someone who's great. He's my childhood friend and he does all site work and all exterior work. If you need his contact, by the way, he's a freaking animal. He's out of Connecticut. Can't remember you're
Okay.
doing anything in Connecticut. I think he's in New York too, state. But he's like, I have a retaining wall issue. The original homeowner, I didn't know anything about a retaining wall, right? What am I going to do? I didn't realize how to build one. I don't know anything about it, right? First time ever getting eyes on it. The homeowner, I learned after the fact that it fell. Didn't use GeoGrid, didn't have drainage, didn't use clear and backfill, didn't do anything properly. It's like they just had some guy stack the blocks.
And that
So
drainage issue is so like that's so commonly overlooked because if you walk past a retaining wall and you're in real estate, you're like, wait, they've got holes in there, there's pipes in there. There's a reason for that. If you're just like, oh shoot, I need to get this wall back up and you stack the bricks like that, it's gonna collapse again in a few weeks, months, or years.
exactly. It's like over 4 feet. In some municipalities, they require a building permit. It's like just do it. For something like that, just get an engineer, stamp it, be done. You know,
I love that you said get the permit because that's another thing I see so often for my clients, not so much us because we know better, but trying to skirt the permit requirement because it's like, well, it's going to take 4 weeks to get a permit and cost me $400. Yeah, but do you know what it's going to cost you when the city comes by and shuts you down
yeah,
and you've got to start over and now pay the fines?
yeah. you know, like I dealt with on my last property flip. the guy did the boiler and the hot water heater. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna file the permit and blah blah blah." I was like, "All right, cool." He never filed it. We got the closing. We redid the septic, right? Got all the septic guy was awesome. Did all of it. Ben Melton, if you ever need a septic guy in Connecticut, he's an animal. I love him. He's a big dude from the South. Really, really nice guy. But he did all the fields, all that, whatever, right? And and I'm like going to close, and they're like, "We can't close." And I'm like, "What's going on? Like, what is something not past inspection?" And they're like, "Well, you got two open permits." And I was like, "For what?" I thought sheetrock insulation, septic, like everything's done. You know, I thought they were all stamped. They're like, "No, for your hot water heater and whatever. We're just waiting on this guy's license to stamp it." I was like, "Oh, okay." So he did the work. Now I gotta trace it, check, trace him down and everything. So, but it ended up working out, and we're gonna close. But it's just like silly things like that.
Right, and that ended up working out for you. But man, title issues are another one of those phantom killers, because if that certificate of occupancy is not valid because of those things, the permits or changes in footprints, and let's say that guy, like, you couldn't get him back,
Mhm.
you're going to have to now go and hire another plumber to come in who is willing to certify someone else's work, which in the trades is not usually so easy to find.
Yeah, and it's like I have a good network of people up here, and I haven't had to do that, but I could if I needed to. But it's like, you're sending another guy out there just to inspect it. He's gonna charge you a fee probably. Um, and if like the first person did it wrong, then you got to go back. You know what I mean? So some of my contractors get a little in a tizzy. Like they always get paid. That's something that's really important too. Pay your guys. Make sure they get paid. Make sure they get paid on time, but also be willing, especially if they're really good. If they're really good, get them freaking paid. They want to be paid. They work hard. They do what they got to do. They take care of you. Take care of them. If there's some additions on it that came as a byproduct of doing work, if they were doing, say, a siding job and they realized that your soffit's running water in because your drip edge isn't properly installed on your roof and there's rot back there and they got to rip out some stuff, put some plywood in and put a new drip edge in, pay them. It's like, what are you going to go out there and bargain with them? Like, oh, you said this is the scope of work. It's like, you need to know that that's going to F up your house.
Right. And just like you didn't know when you did your calculations, and presented them the scope of work, you can't hold them responsible for something that you didn't know, because it's not in their scope of work. So you're absolutely right. And it's, I think a lot of investors get greedy because they're like, well, I'm not getting paid until closing. Okay, but that's what you signed up for. They
Yeah,
signed up to do a job for payments.
yeah, you get paid. Well, you actually pay out everything, but you make your money in the beginning. And along the way, you have to keep 10 to 20% and whatever your expected budget is to the side because you're going to probably go over budget. I had a house that I did that I lost so much money on, and I'll be the first one to admit it. I've done really well on the other four, right? Really well on two, decent on the other two, and then I lost money on this one, right? And I'm not gonna lie to you, like I'm gonna sit here and it was destructive to my ego, right? It was like a like someone took a baseball bat and my ego was a glass jar and they shattered it, right? And in the beginning, I was like, "Oh, I'm thinking about giving up on real estate. Like, do I really know what I'm doing? Like, am I stupid?" All these things start going through my head. But then I took a step back and I'm like, "Why would I do that? I got better. You know, let me use this as like, if I keep sitting here in my own filth and grime, it's not going to help anyone." So I repivoted and I was like, "Okay, let's do this right. All right, let's get it done." So I didn't give up.
I want to use that as an opportunity to backtrack a little bit, because this is always curious to me. What made you get into real estate to begin with? Right, you've got a great job as an operating engineer. You're in a union. So, what made you decide to take this risk, for all the fame that comes with being in real estate?
Oh, I didn't do it for the fame. You don't get into real estate for the fame. All the people who are like big and braggios, whatever, I have a weird feeling that they may not be the best landlords. It's like, why are you looking externally for for that stuff. Like you get it, like all of my tenants were previously homeless or from the women's shelter or something else, right? I'm doing a service to the cities that I grew up around, and I care about these people. Like a lot of them have had past issues, mental health, illness, drug, whatever it is. I can't get into it specifically because of like medical law and stuff like that. And I won't say names or anything, obviously, but like all my tenants are mostly lovely and they're a little rough around the edges, but they know I hold up my end of the bargain. A lot of the times they do too, but sometimes I get burned. But I had a woman punch a hole in the wall. She's like, and ripped the door off the door jamb because she got drunk and locked her keys outside of her whatever. And I was like, she's like, oh, well, that wasn't me. Someone tried to break in. And I was like, dog, you literally texted me an hour and a half out asking if I wanted to go to the bar with you, which I obviously don't do. And I'm like, you come home drunk, forgot your keys, text us that you can't find your keys, and then you go someone else tried breaking into the door. I'm like, come on, you know, I wasn't born yesterday. It's like, but sometimes it's just better to give the security deposit back and just get them out of your hair, and then do it right by the next person and create more ground rules, harden up your lease, add things to your lease, make your lease like idiot proof.
I got to tell
Um,
you, that is such a great point. Over the last 3 years, I think our standard lease has been revised 2 dozen times. And that's on an as needed basis because you can never think of every, like, I thought I've seen it all. I've seen some stuff, but there's always a point where it's like, oh, that's got to go in future leases. Like, it's got to be specifically stated that you're not allowed to bring in any appliances that were not in the apartment. Because next thing you know, someone brings in a washing machine, hooks it up in their kitchen that there's no hookups for, and they're flooding the downstairs neighbor. And now it's like, well, you didn't say I couldn't do it.
yeah,
So you threw that in there, then threw in you also need to get renter's insurance. I can't enforce it, but in your lease, it states that it's your obligation. And if there's any damage, theft, or whatever, we're not liable because you were informed you need to buy it. And it's freaking $4 a month. Why wouldn't you?
yeah, you got to text me that one. I got to bury that in my lease too. Um,
Uh,
but back to your question, sort of backtracking, like you said before, why did I get into real estate? I got into real estate sort of out of fear. My parents, when I was in end of high school into college, were talking about getting a divorce, and during a divorce, the home gets fragmented, so it's like I don't know where the hell I'm gonna live. They one of them talked about, oh, you're gonna have to figure out where to live, all this stuff. So out of desperation, so first off, they're still not separate. They're still not divorced, but they're separated, right? They still have the one house. The other one has a different house now, right? But they're still bound to each other legally, which is whatever. That's a separate issue. But out of fear, I was like, I need to get a house. I need to have like a mother-daughter style house where the tenants pay for all my expenses because I'm just entry level right now, not making a lot of money at my job. That's when that was 4 years, 5 years ago, and I was like, e, and I'm getting nervous. You're 20 years old, finishing up my MBA in finance, right? I have an MBA in financial management too. I sort of fast tracked the college route. I did 6 years in four, the undergrad in three, and my MBA in one. So um, I've always been like cognizant of money because that's usually the argument that I got to see with my parents. They're fighting over money, and the other one was the home. So for me, it was more out of stability, right? Um, some people are like, "Oh, you're in it to get rich" and all that stuff. It's like it's you're talking like an uphill battle. When you buy something, you got to buy it right. Sometimes you f up and you buy something you lose money on, which I did. And you learn and you grow, and then you also have mortgages, right? Like it's not like the house is on free and clear. I like until that house is on free and clear, you're really making that much money? No, it's just a little bit off the top. And then you're constantly battling with nincompoop tenants who, not all of them, I shouldn't say nincompoop because a lot of my freaking tenants are dynamite. Um,
However, one bad one for every 20 good ones can lead you to make that generalization because when they're bad, they're bad. So, I mean, I cannot stress the importance of tenant screening. I don't care if they're friends of family, background checks, credit scores. You never know what you're going to find. And the last thing you want, I mean, this actually happened to us is because we weren't doing criminal background checks at the time. We were just doing credit checks and income checks to find out that you now have a sex offender from another state that we probably wouldn't have found out even on a criminal check living downstairs from a tenant upstairs who has three young kids.
Oh yeah, yeah. I ran into a situation where one of my tenants was like, she was getting all torn up about something. She's like, my parole officer, blah, blah. I was like, whoa, 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 parole officer, what are you doing? She's like, I robbed a house and I stole shit, but I was homeless. I needed some money. And I was like, you're killing me. But I
Thanks
keep
for your honesty, but
yeah, and I tell her, I'm like, listen, the house that you're in is like transitional. I tell them straight up, I'm like, if you're not on your feet I'm like, after 3 years, 1 to 3 years, if you're still in this house, I'm kicking you out. I'm not renewing your lease. And they're like, oh, why would you want that? I'm like, this is transitional housing. There's tons and tons of homeless people that need housing. You know, if you're not going to respect it, and if you're not going to take your time to go work, save some money, and get on your feet, like, you get the fuck out. you know I'm like, I don't fucking play games, excuse my French. I was like, I don't play games. I'm here. I was like, I don't care. I'll take all of you out. I'll lose money. I don't care. I was like, I'll rent it out to college kids. I don't care. I'll lose money. I really genuinely don't care. I'm here to help the community, you know like at the end of the day, like from my job, make enough money, like I'll be fine to cover that. The other house is taken care of. Like, I don't care. Like, I'll just do it because it's the right thing to do. I don't freaking care. And I know
yeah.
that might be a weird thing coming from a real estate investor, but like sometimes the headaches aren't worth it.
No, look, I totally get it. I have this conversation with my partners at points where we have tenants who are habitually behind and they're consistently bailed out by any number of local organizations who we all work with as well. Like we're very big on helping the community. So we work with HUD, we work with Human Services, we work with the local domestic violence shelters. But you've had someone pay your rent for 6, 9, 12 months, and you're still in this situation every single month. There are other people who could use that unit and get themselves on their feet and start contributing to society. If you don't have any intention of doing that, I agree with you completely. This was
And
not meant to be permanent.
too, New York City, we're in the epicenter of New York City, right? Where you're at in PA and where I'm at in Connecticut and New York and stuff. And also where you live in New York. Like, there's 100,000 migrants in New York City. They're not going to be absorbed into that city. They're going to slowly disperse out. Danbury is a hotspot for Guatemalans and Brazilians, right? I don't know what Yonkers is or whatever, and these other areas, White Plains. But I know in my neck of the woods, there's tons of Guatemalans and there's tons of Brazilians, and they're really good people and they're hardworking, and a lot of them are not legal, right? And that runs into a lot of issues. They can only work for cash and different things like that, or I don't really even know how it works for green cards, right? But like those people, I'd rather give those people a shot. I don't even know if I can house them, but I've thought about it. I don't know if I can or not, but it's like eventually I'd take someone maybe who's in that situation who's working towards getting their green card or getting their working papers, and once they get them, have them move in because I know that they're going to work hard, take care of the place, you know, and like the homeless problem and people needing housing is only going to get exacerbated as more and more people come in. You see all the migrants getting processed. I work down in Manhattan and I see them, like, it's the amount of food delivery guys on bikes that are working now, from Northern Africa. You see, people from India, you see people from literally every walk of life, and they're migrants when they're lined up at the Roosevelt Hotel or one of the hotels and they're hopping on their scooters or their e-bikes to go do food deliveries because that's the only job they can work, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so, and eventually they're going to start, it's going to have to expand. There's no way you can have like a one bedroom rental in Manhattan. I think the average rent is $5,000 a month. It doesn't, give me a break. There's no shot the city or the state of New York can handle that. Right? They're going to go bankrupt by the time they try to house them in these 200 to $400 a night hotel, or even if it's $100 a night times 100,000 people. You do the math, and we've got a winter time in New York State. Like, you're losing. It's a losing battle, and I don't think they're going to pick up and move to like Maine, or they're going to pick up and move to like Indiana. I think they're going to stay in like an hour's trip from New York City, maybe 2 hours, and try to get steady employment.
So where I want to just end one thing on that because we're just about at time.
All right.
You mentioned the affordable housing crisis. That's kind of become our mission. Is outside of feeding our families and everything else, is we know how bad it is, and through our contracts with one of the local municipalities where we do all of the HUD inspections and basically place their tenants when we can. HUD at a federal level has just changed all of their inspection criteria for 2024. And they have made it so far beyond restrictive that there is almost no landlord in the country who is going to be able to comply with their requirements,
Mhm.
which is going to lead to mass voiding of vouchers, and ultimately lack of housing. Because once those vouchers are cut off, landlords are just going to tell the tenants they have to go,
Yeah.
and there's no middle ground. It's like the government doesn't realize the restrictiveness they're putting into place for whatever reason is actually going to make the housing crisis get far worse.
Yeah. I think it would be proactive to talk with landlords, because some landlords do some stuff that you're just like, what in God's name is going on here, right? But a lot of the times, landlords are just trying to, if they finish a room, whatever, that's technically not like a bedroom, but they use as an extra bedroom, like there should be some leeway with that. But there's like certain things you can't cut corners on with like electrical roofs, like just do that right.
Oh no, Tyler, we're talking ridiculous things. Like if they find you have a plastic dryer vent instead of a metal dryer vent, they will fail your inspection. And if you don't remediate it in 24 hours, you're going to lose your voucher.
Oh, that's sort of silly.
Yeah, no, when I tell you I was out there yesterday and I just got the bullet points of the changes, they make no sense. From a real estate standpoint, they make absolutely no sense. I don't know what the end game is. That might be a whole other episode for a whole other day once I do some more research. But we are right about time, and I know you have to get back to your flip to deal with some unexpected rot that has appeared. So I want to be respectful of your time. Love to get you back on the show, maybe when that project wraps up, so we can hear about how it finished in terms of experience and profitability. But otherwise, I really do appreciate you making the time in your schedule today to come on the show, Tyler.
Yeah, of course, Matt. If you ever want me back on, let me know. I love chatting with you. You're a great dude. We bounce ideas off each other. I learn a ton. The housing situation in your area similar to my area, and affordable housing is becoming an oxymoron. I talk to a lot of developers and they're saying affordable housing is really just base level appliances and stuff that they build right now. And even in like wishy-washy bottom of the barrel markets, right? Like Hartford, Connecticut, or like, Waterbury, there's still, there's affordable is not quite affordable. So,
Well, yeah, and I mean appliances. That's a drop in the bucket. If you look at the price of lumber from the beginning of the pandemic to now, if you look at the price of aluminum, construction materials in general, unless you're building a house out of cardboard, there's no way to build it affordably unless you're cutting those corners. And even then, I mean, it's still going to cost you an arm and a leg to build something that may fall down.
yeah, and you can't cut corners. Cutting corners is just gonna, with your framing block, foundation, everything, roof, don't cut corners. Just do it right, do it once, and you're good. It can last you 30 years for the most part, sometimes 5, 10 years, whatever it is. But yeah, I know you gotta go. I'll let you go. Let's chat again soon. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Everyone tuning in, thank you very much. We appreciate you supporting the reboot of the Get Real podcast. You just spent this time with Matt Harms and Tyler Hart. Any questions on anything we went over? If you want to consult with myself or Tyler, in the show notes, just leave us a comment, or you can email me, Matt, MATT, at timeawaygroup.com. Always love to hear from you. Thank you, everyone. And Tyler, once again, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Matt. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.